Hi everyone, this is Vaughan Ling with the Warrior Painters podcast. Today I'll be talking with Sahil Lavingia. He's the founder of Gumroad. He's a painter, a writer. He likes to tweet a lot. And we'll talk about the creator economy and his thoughts on art education.
I wanted to be an architect initially, which I actually think like relates to what I like to plein air paint too. But yeah, I wanted to be an architect mostly because I liked drawing as a kid and I was good at math. People would always tell me I was good at math. So I was like, oh, math plus drawing, architecture. But pretty quickly learned out that's not really what I wanted to do. I never was like, I'm going to be a doctor or a policeman or a astronaut or something.
Yeah, pretty practical.
Pretty boring.
Okay, so I got another question. I've asked you this question before, but it's what is the thing that you talk about a lot, and when you talk about it, you notice people slowly start walking away from you? Or
yeah, I mean, painting is kind of like that when I talk to people, and I don't know what answer I gave you last time, but like painting is a little bit like that when I talk to people who aren't in painting, or even sometimes people who are in painting, who are in the art sort of entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like, I don't know, I like just talking about like I say the same thing over and over again when I get excited, and so people get the point, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna spend 5 more minutes just like saying the same thing because it's cool. It's so cool. Like I don't know, it's like, it's just interesting. Like when I learned that you know, like the color green doesn't really have like temperature in it so much, which is kind of, I think, one of the reasons it's hard to paint. You know, like if you look at there's like a color spectrum for photography that like has like the temperature scale, and it like doesn't have really green in it. It kind of goes from like blue to yellow to red and orange and stuff, right? Like green is kind of missing from that. I just think that's so cool. That's such a cool thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you look up like there's a word for a spectrometer scale or something like that. But it's like, oh, maybe that's why it's so hard to paint greens, because like everything looks muddy and dirty and dead because you know,
it's puke.
Puke. Yeah, it looks like puke. It looks like vomit. The puke. Yeah, exactly. Putrid colors. You know. So yeah, just like, I don't know, that's stuff like that. But I think I really like talking about like power structures and like how industries work at a pretty high level. And sometimes people get a little bit weirded out by that sometimes.
Well, I'm into that. I like that. I do know that people sometimes are like, oh my God,
like, I just want to paint. I just want to paint. Yeah, I just want to make movies. I just want to like write code. It's like, yeah, but like if you want to do this effectively, like it's helpful to understand like how your industry works sometimes, you know? Yeah. That's the way I think about it. A lot of people don't, which is fine too.
Yeah.
Writing as well. I like talking about writing. People like to tune out when I start talking about 3-act structures and hero journeys and things like that, you know, as well. Lots of things. I'm good at that.
Yeah, you're a passionate guy. You have a lot of, I think in general, you're okay with that. Last time you said that you when you talk about politics, people run away, I think.
Oh yeah, politics.
That's another thing, but
yeah. I think I've improved a little bit on that one, especially nowadays because it's like so tense.
Yeah.
It's really hard so I just kind of veer away now from talking about that kind of stuff.
I saw a little bit of stuff on the Gumroad Facebook group, like some politics,
oh yeah,
stuff, and you're popping in and like, you know, doing things.
It's for people who want context on that, because it's interesting. Like basically we have a Facebook group for like, you know, it's like 2,000 or 3,000 Gumroad creators. Everyone's welcome to join it. It's not exclusive or anything, but someone asked like what percentage of Gumroad is Black as sort of the employee count, I think. And it just got tense really fast, which I think makes sense. People are making sure that the companies they use and, you know, are sort of not evil or not, you know, that, you know, they want to make sure they're you know, spending their money where they want. But it's heated and people have a lot of opinions, and there are a lot of assumptions. Like when you ask a question like that like people just can't help but like it turns very personal very quickly, you know?
Yeah. A lot of people jumped on that thread like super fast. It did get heated.
Yeah, people have opinions about this kind of stuff. And then a lot of the opinions are like, there are a lot of people who are like, I wish we didn't talk about it, you know? And that's like, but that's also controversial because if you're like wrapped up in it and you want to talk about it and you can't talk about it, it's tricky. It's really hard, especially as like someone who runs this company that's trying to make it for everybody, but also like, there are people who like, there's this weird idea of like tolerance, right? Like to be tolerant to a group of people, it requires some amount of intolerance to another group of people, right? Because if there's someone in there who's like super, I don't know, like a super racist person, obviously, like you can't be tolerant to that person without basically making it a sort of an unsafe place for other people. So it gets tricky. It's a hard problem. And I'm sure warrior painters will eventually, if not already, will start to deal with issues like that. It's inevitable.
Yeah, definitely. I guess the bigger it gets, the more tricky it gets.
Totally.
All right. So another question. I noticed that you like to meet strangers from the internet. Like you will put out open, like, oh, like you were doing meetings, getting coffee with people that message you on Twitter or something like that, right? Or just inviting people to meet you. I think that's how we met. Like you were going to CTN one year and you just put out an open, like, hey, I'm going to be at CTN. Anybody want to, meet up? And that's how we met. So I guess, when did you start doing this? Like, where'd you get that idea and what has given you back to do that?
Yeah, totally. So I started doing that in 2010 when I first moved to USC. I grew up primarily in Singapore. So I was born in New York, but primarily grew up in Singapore. Moved back to the US to go to college at USC in LA. And I had started doing startup-y, techie things in high school, but like Singapore wasn't, this is like quite 10 years ago, right? So like not as much of this happening, especially there. And I went to USC and I was just like, I need to meet my group. Like I need to find these people, and tech, because it's so techie, it's like people were living on, we're already, like I started using Twitter in 2008, Instagram in 2010, sort of like pre-Facebook acquisition and things like that. And so like, this is how people were kind of communicating. So like, it was a very natural thing to be like, hey, I'm finally within 20 miles of where some of these people live. Like, let's meet up in person. And because like I tweet, people can look at my Twitter and be like, this person's probably not going to murder me. Right. Like there's a level of, and there's probably some like gender privilege and things like that I sort of have too. But like in general, like, it's just like, it was always very natural for me to be like, hey, I'm finally in this space, this physical space. Zoom is great, but like meeting people in person, I think is just so much better. And there's something to be said about the sort of in-person interactions that you can get. And so I started doing that. And like, in San Francisco, I would meet literally, I think over the course of the 6 years I lived there, probably over 7,000 to 8,000 people, like one-on-one for coffee. a lot. People think the math's exaggerated. And I think it's actually it's whatever the opposite of exaggerated is.
So
like,
what does that work out to? Is it like one a day or one a week?
It's a lot more than that. It's like, it works out to being like, I think 20 a week or something like that.
20 a week?
Yeah. I mean, when I lived in LA, like in Burbank 6 months ago, for 6 months, I think I didn't count, but like probably per week I was meeting 10, at least 5 to 10 people a week. Just like, I just love doing that because I think it's like the secret. I don't really believe in secrets. Otherwise I would be a much better painter by now, or shortcuts, I should say. But I think one that potentially exists is like just meeting people who are like ahead of you and like getting to like, just, in an hour talking to you about Blender is going to teach me more than like me, messing around, like, on the internet for 15 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Promo. But it just, and it makes it gets easier over time because like I'm a relatively interesting person now. Like you can look at my Twitter account and be like, oh, he runs Gumroad, he has a bunch of followers, he's verified, like he's probably, again, not going to kill me. And so most people will take the meeting. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like, if you reach out to, I don't know, random stranger that you think is a really good painter or a really good writer or a really good director, like they will very likely take the meeting with you because guess what? They need people and they're trying to make things happen for themselves, and like having a network of people that are interesting and competent and hardworking and build things and things like that it's just, super, super, super valuable. And
well, I can see it like when you got your online persona that you've developed now, but what about before Gumroad, before all these things? Like, was it the same deal, or was
I
it
think
like
so.
more
Yeah.
difficult to find people, or about whatever the same?
No, I mean, it's probably easier now because I can name drop more things if I needed to meet people, but like it's still roughly the same level of ease. Like for example, I can go into, like I saw this, I've been working on this like Gumroadians concept for a while, uh, and I wanted to meet this director who like had done some stuff with Pendleton Ward, on a show. And so
Hmm.
I found his like Twitter, and I just like followed him on Twitter, and like, 5 minutes later he followed me back, and I just DM'd him being like, hey, do you want to grab coffee? And we just like, hung out in Glendale and chatted for like 3 hours about just, animation and random stuff for like, and so like that person's never going to forget me for the rest of his life. If I ever need
Yeah.
something from him or like whatever, like, um, it's such a profoundly deep connection. Yeah, I slide into DMs. Michelle says in the chat. I love sliding in. I was sliding into DMs
Ugh.
since before DMs were a thing. I know. I guess it has like a negative, a sultry kind of connotation,
Just
I guess.
sliding into the MSN
But
Messenger.
I slide into DMs like still today. There's always like interesting people doing interesting stuff all the time, and like, yeah, I send people cold emails all the time.
Were you poking
Uh,
people?
oh no, never. Don't poke. Don't
You
poke.
weren't poking. Okay, that's good.
Just DMs. I don't do Instagram DMs too. I think that's like different connotation too. But
Really?
like
Instagram?
Twitter,
How is
I guess,
Instagram?
I guess artists are on Instagram all the time, so it's different. But
That's how we usually, yeah, we always, what is talking on Twitter like filthy or dirty somehow?
no, no, no. I like Twitter. It really depends on the community. Like tech lives on Twitter. That's where all the tech
Yeah,
people
it
hang
does.
out.
It does.
Whereas
Yeah.
like artists, they all hang out on Instagram and stuff. But
Yeah, I definitely noticed, like, as soon as I started, following Blender stuff, every single person was on Twitter. I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta get Twitter now, because
yeah,
that's how it is. But it's pretty cool though. I'm warming up to Twitter now. It seems more and more interesting to me, because there's some interesting discussions, and yeah, and I guess that's a good segue into, like, you this year. I feel like, or the past couple years, you've been like hitting Twitter hard. You've been
hmm
kind of on there, and I guess exploring with the platform and just doing a lot with it, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it seems a little silly, but that can be, part of your whole. I mean, it can lead to other stuff too, right? Like, it's building something
yeah.
bigger. So I don't know.
It's like the word people don't like saying is personal brand. Because it sounds like almost too manufactured or something. Like you're not being authentic, you're not being yourself or whatever. But it's just strategic. It's just like the way I think about it is like if you're gonna tweet, you might as well be like mindful about what you're tweeting. And like if you're gonna post on Instagram, you might as well be mindful about what you're posting on Instagram. And in general, people want to follow people like they want to learn from, and like get content from. And so like if you have a feed of stuff that's just random things that have no real consistency or like sort of through line, it would be like, for example, the equivalent would be like showing someone like an art director a portfolio and just like all this random stuff. And it's like, cool, you're like a pretty good artist. But if you're like, here are like 50 vehicle designs that I've done, and I've like taken them all the way through from like concept to, modeling and texturing all the way through, like maybe even animating them or whatever. It's like, okay, you like vehicles. Like we have a job
Yeah.
for you. And my
So
friend has a job for you or whatever.
so you're
And so
making
it's
like
like,
a arc story arc for your Twitter, kind of?
basically, yeah, basically. There's a really good quote that says like the art of writing is saying the same thing over and over again without anyone noticing. And so I think painting is probably similar. It's like the art of painting is basically doing the same thing over and over again without anyone noticing. It's like, if you look at like Angela's work, who I'm sure everyone's familiar with, I like it's very clear. Like you could see a painting from her, and it's just like pretty obvious. Like it's her painting.
Yeah.
Even though she might be painting different things, like the light and the color and all that kind of stuff, it's like very evident, right? And so it's kind of like the same thing with my Twitter. It's just like I have a shtick basically, and that shtick is, I like I want more people to build businesses. Like if I had to sum up my MO for the Twitter account, it would be like, I want more people to start businesses. And, basically if you look at a lot of what I say, it's kind of like different ways of saying that and, over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's a really good message, I think, because especially for artists, because we were just talking about this last week. Like artists don't really hear that message enough. We don't hear it in school. We don't hear it even from our heroes, because most of our heroes are still working at companies. So it's like there's not really that example, that we don't have, that support to get there. So, I mean, it's really cool.
I mean, it's about like finding your leverage, like if you're doing $50 commissions or something as a student in art school, like, you're not going to be doing that for the rest of your life. I mean, that's going to suck. No one wants to do that. Right. So it's really like, how do you scale your time? How do you productize yourself? Selling digital products, obviously, like the ultimate version of that, if you look at like sort of like the people who've had the most success financially, at least, it's often they start companies, right? They own things. Typically they either own products that they've made, IP that they've built or written or whatever, or companies, in my case, companies that I've started or invested in, and it's really like, there are very few ways it's basically capital. Like, what is your capital, right? We live in a capitalistic economy, which basically means that like capital is the primary thing. And so like you should own capital,
our system is basically sort of rigged against anyone who's not doing their own business. I feel like it's so difficult.
Yeah, basically.
It's so freaking hard that it's almost impossible. And that's why we have all these people like, working multiple jobs and barely making rent and stuff. It's like,
like I went to Comic-Con last year, and it was pretty clear, like the most powerful people were not the actors, were not the artists, it was like the CEO of Netflix, Kevin Feige, like these are executives that have, sort of like, they basically own a lot of the decision making and a lot of the equity behind these things. It's like, and you see this sometimes, like you'll see it blow up on Twitter occasionally, where there was like Mouse Guard, right? That like thing that was everyone was excited about. Like Ryan Lang was tweeting about it all the time, and like the art looked amazing, but like, who has the true power and leverage to make this thing actually happen? Artists can try. Like, you can make really cool art and really be like, look how cool this is, and all these artists are like, look how cool that is, like we want to see that. But ultimately it's like one room full of people that gets to decide, like, does this deserve $10 million, $20 million to turn into a TV show or not? It's very few people get to make that decision.
It's very angering.
It's frustrating. It is frustrating. It totally is. It's really frustrating. Like I write, for example, I write science fiction and fantasy for fun. And, I have friends, and again, like, this is why I network. I mean, this kind of goes back to the strategy of it, is like, I want to know everybody. I want to be, 1 degree away from everybody, basically. And so I know, I know people who are like, like they run Lucasfilm, for example. And so I can talk to them and so I think strategically for my own science fiction, like, and my own painting career and things like that, it's like, I'm not going to succeed at this thing if I just become a really good writer and a really good painter, because there are a lot of really good writers, really, really good painters. Like, I'm going to succeed because I'm a really good writer, really good painter, or I will be over time. And I'm really well connected, and I can tell a narrative. I can sort of communicate really well. I have my own personal capital that I can sort of like put into the thing so that I can like get it further by myself, so that when I take it to them, they're like, holy crap, this is almost done. But the number one thing they say is like, look, if you want to get something made in Hollywood, the best way to do that is to have it be successful already. Like, if you have a graphic novel that people love, a lot of people love, you're going to have, your chances are much higher,
Yeah, that's true. I've heard of a lot of even people from Tumblr and Twitter that have like a big following on
it's
Twitter,
super
and then they end up running shows and stuff.
Did you hear about Kirby Jenner? Do you know this thing?
No, I don't know. What's that?
So Quibi, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with, they have a show called Kirby Jenner, which is basically this guy who started an Instagram account, uh, and he basically photoshopped himself. I think photoshopped himself. I'm not exactly sure, but effectively he photoshopped himself into photos of the Jenner
Celebrity.
family with,
Oh, yeah,
and he basically said like, I'm Kirby Jenner. He like basically made up a character, right? Of like
yeah.
there's like this
Yeah,
brother
yeah.
who no one ever talked about or whatever, right? This kind of funny thing.
That's
And he
amazing.
has like 400,000 Instagram followers or something. Uh, and now guess what? He has a show produced by Chris and Kendall Jenner on Quibi that he probably made millions of dollars doing, you know? And he, guess
Wow.
what? Guess what? He probably knows all these people now. And he is a genuinely hilarious person, right? So like, this is like this is a very good example of someone who like, you know, who kind of did this. Like there are a lot of people as funny as he is, but he was the one who built an audience of 400,000 people. And that's probably what moved the needle for him, right?
That's pretty genius. That's pretty out of the box thinking there, for sure.
Yeah, you gotta, a friend of mine, he has a really good quote, which is like, if you're doing the things that people are telling you to do, if you're a really good student, the problem with that is that teacher is teaching a lot of other people at the same time, right? And so
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you're
yeah.
inherently going to be competing with everybody else. So like there's this idea of like Alice in Wonderland of going down the rabbit hole, and you basically just have to do that. Like you just have to get so interested in something that like no one else is really paying attention to, you know? And then
Yeah.
you become the best at that weird thing. Like no one else was photoshopping themselves next to Kendall Jenner in all these photos. Uh, and you become the best, and like you hope that, you know, a lot of other people care about that thing or find it funny or whatever. But
Yeah.
like the worst thing you could, not the worst thing you could do, but like if you just copy people and you're like, oh, like Vaughn does all these really cool, like oh, Vaughn's making a cool painting app, for example, like that makes it like, you know, it kind of has this like look and feel to it that's really cool and exciting and uses the, you know, Godot engine and things like that. I'm gonna do that too. Guess what? It's not gonna work. Like you got to find something else. You got to find your own problem and find your own solution to that problem, right? Um, and so, uh, the frustrating thing about it is like no one's going to tell you what that is for you, like
Yeah,
because
yeah. That's
it,
the hardest
you know,
part for sure. Just choosing something or
yeah,
finding something.
and typically it's something that like you are probably painting in a certain way, or like going for a certain look and feel, and you're like, this is taking me 10 hours because of the tools that I have. And like if I build a simple thing that did this instead, it would take me 10 minutes or whatever.
Right,
Like,
right.
you know,
Exactly.
and then you solved your own problem, and now turns out
Hmm.
there's a demand for it. um yeah, so
So,
it's,
and if we bring it back to you and Gumroad, were you running into a problem when
yeah,
the idea popped up?
yeah, I wanted to sell this pencil icon that I designed in Photoshop to my audience on Twitter, and there was no way for me to do that.
You're trying to sell Procreate brushes? What's
No.
that?
Not too different from what people are doing today. 9 years later, yeah,
Oh
I
man.
designed this like little pencil, this photorealistic pencil icon, uh, and yeah, I built like a little prototype that weekend, launched it Monday morning, and then it kind of blew up, and yeah, the rest is kind of history.
Um, so it only became like your main thing after it blew up, right? Like you weren't going
Yeah,
into it thinking like, oh yeah, this is gonna be my next 10 years.
basically, yeah. I mean, I think it's really hard to know what's going to work. Like a lot of people think they know, but I don't really buy that too much. Like there's so
Yeah,
many factors. So I think it's like, don't quit your day job. Like just like, you know, an hour a day or, you know,
yeah.
whatever, nights and weekends, like learn, make. Like for
So
example, if you're a full-time artist, like you might have like a, you know, an IP that you're working on, right? Similar kind
yeah,
of idea.
and
Yeah.
you had a couple. You were doing Twitter, Pinterest for a little while, right?
Hmm.
And also Turntable FM. I haven't seen that one, but what was Turntable
Yeah.
FM like?
Yeah. Turntable I found was awesome. It was a couple friends of mine. So I did their iPhone app. But basically it was you would join like a room, like basically a nightclub room on your phone, or a desktop. So you join a room, and then there'd be people DJing. There'd be like 5 DJ booths, and basically it was like you'd pick a song, and you'd be able to like go up on stage and then like pick a song. So basically it was like a community, like, you know, listening experience kind of thing, but like
Yeah,
very skeuomorphic. you know.
But I mean, and then that kind of idea is like, that's basically what Discord is like now. Like we have the little
Yeah,
radio
so
bot
yeah,
inside the
yeah,
Discord,
yeah,
and people type in songs and they do karaoke and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that. Super, super similar.
So so that was like a regular job. Did you learn anything or take anything away from it that was like sort of that you took into your next thing, or were you already thinking about starting a business like back then at Turntable, or
Yeah, it was on my mind for sure. I mean, the thing that I picked up from Turntable, I think, was it's I mean, it kind of replies to a lot of what we were talking about like asking for permission and like power structures and things. But like working in music is brutally difficult because there's so few people who have the, again, capital, like they own the music, literally like the rights to stream or play any of this music, which is
Mhm,
like basically there's like Warner, Sony, and Universal,
mhm.
and maybe one more. So you basically have to say, hey, I'm building a music service. Can I use your, like TikTok had to go through this, right? They're like, hey, there's all illegal in the beginning, and they're like, we need to do this legally. So
Mm.
like, hey, can we like use your catalog in our app? And Universal and all these other folks are like, yeah, that sounds great. We want 7% of your company,
Wow.
uh, which is a lot. Yeah. Yeah. But it is what it is. If you want the music, I mean, like, what are you going to do? Like, would TikTok work if there was no music on it by mainstream artists? No. So they gave up 7% of the company. And so there's just yeah, it's like, it taught me that I don't want to build a company that is so reliant on very few people, right? Because you don't have any leverage in that conversation. Roughly, Spotify, all these companies roughly have given up 7% of the company. The only exceptions to those rules would be like Apple scale, right? Where they're so far along that like you're not going to give up 7% of Apple.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they still got a pretty good deal out of
Hmm.
it. Yeah.
So back then, seeing the control that these other outside sources had on Turntable FM was like, okay, when I do it, I don't want to be in that situation like these guys, because they can
Mm-hmm.
get screwed over. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. And then okay, so Twitter, Pinterest, anything from there that, similarly that you took away from Pinterest?
Yeah. I mean, Pinterest was like, honestly, it was such a perfect experience. Like there were so few things to learn because everything worked. Like I joined and it blew up, and now it's a $16 billion company. Like it didn't really struggle, at least while I was there. And so I didn't, typically need to struggle and fail to learn, I think. Um,
Yeah.
but it taught me what like hyper growth startups were, like the scale of technology and software is, and like how fast it can happen is just crazy. And I think a lot of people, it kind of reminds me of like when coronavirus started happening and like the cases would like go like this every day.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, oh, this is not that bad. Like 100 people died. And it's like, well, yeah, but like it's going to go up here if we don't do anything.
Yeah.
And most of my startup people were like the people who I knew who were first on it, were people who were into that startup kind of stuff because they've seen what an exponential curve can do, because it's virality, right? That's the term people use in the startup
Yeah.
industry. Like you're looking for
Oh yeah,
virality,
that's true.
right? What
Uh,
does virality mean? It means that basically one person can spread something to more than one person, right? That's like the viral coefficient, which is,
so
yeah.
okay, so this virality thing, is this something that you were exposed to also in school, or were you in
No,
startup school, or were you just
no, no.
like,
I wish there.
is
Actually, I
there
don't know.
such a
I
thing
don't
as startup
know.
school? There isn't?
There's technically a term. There is technically a school called startup school, but no, you just honestly you just learn it by reading. Like you just read and Twitter. Like you just follow. Like the equivalent would be master studies or something. It's like you just read from. You buy like the James Gurney book, and you're like, you paint a lot, and you're like, and then you read a bit, and you paint a lot, and you read a bit, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's why like the thing under the roof is green is because it's like bounce light from the grass or whatever. But it doesn't really internalize. Like I know like you do it in
Yeah,
school,
yeah.
like you learn color theory and shit, and then you go out and paint and your paintings look terrible and you're like, I don't understand. Like I learn all this stuff but I can't apply it. And it's like, well, yeah, because you haven't like
Yeah,
your
yeah.
body, like whatever's happening, it's not really
You haven't been through
there.
it. You haven't been physically through it. So
I think
yeah.
of it like the difference
Okay.
between like knowledge and wisdom, you know, like
Yeah.
I can tell you all these things about painting, but then when I actually do it, like clearly it's not happening for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm my eye is much better than my body at like, you know, kind of that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Um,
So the
and
Pinterest thing kind of like
yeah,
blew your mind a little bit, and you realized just how crazy everything could be.
yeah, like if you have an average user shares it to 20 other people, you can go from like we went from within a year, we went from like 15,000 users total, right? So like
Mhm.
that's not a lot. Like 15. I mean, how many people do you have in Warrior Painters? Like it's like
Yeah,
one
exactly.
order of magnitude less. Like
Yeah, yeah.
15,000 all on Pinterest, and then within a year, it's like 5 million.
What the hell?
Actually, maybe a lot more than that. Yeah, it was actually I don't know, whatever. It was a lot. It was
It
a
was
lot.
crazy. Got it.
And then 5 to 50 million, right? It's just like huge jumps. The only way that's possible, that's possible is people sharing it with their
Yeah.
network, right?
Oh, okay. This
There's
is a
no way.
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying, like to reach that sort of scale,
Mhm.
it's the only way. You cannot, like I can't think of a single other thing that has reached 1 billion people or 100 million people or in any time that
Oh,
isn't
yeah.
viral.
It has to be exponential, right? Like
It has to be
you can't
exponential.
linearly pay your way through that, which leads me to my next question about Gumroad is like I don't remember ever seeing an ad for it, and I was introduced through this another artist named Anthony Jones
Mhm.
back in the day, and I was just wondering if you guys were just relying on word of mouth at that point, or how were
Mhm.
you growing so fast? Like,
Yeah, really just word of mouth. Word of mouth. Still today, we don't do any paid advertising, and the Gumroad chart looks pretty nice.
hmm
It's just word of mouth. It's just building a really great product and hoping people. It's not perfect. We're definitely making it better, um, all the time. But yeah, just making a really great product and solving a problem. You know, like like it sounds stupid, but like a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people in startups. They often have the. So you're talking about like a lot of artists. Like maybe they're not thinking about the business stuff as much, right?
yeah.
Um, Sometimes I think people in startup land are like the opposite, where they're like so obsessed about building a business that they haven't like thought through the fundamentals of like what they're actually building. Um, it would be like meeting someone who's just like, I just want to build a business that lets me paint all day or something. You're like, what? That doesn't make sense. Um, but like I meet people all the time that are like, oh, I am building I don't know. I can't even come up with a stupid example, but like like an app that like lets me like see what like local events are happening in my area or something like that. And I'm like, that's not a terrible idea. Like, but it's an idea that it's like one of those ideas that I've heard that so many times that I kind of know where that idea is coming from, which is you're in school, you're in college, you hear that startups are cool and awesome, and like you want to do a startup. You're in college, and in college it's very good. You want this because you're in this local geographic bubble and you want to know like what's happening around me. And so you have like 50,000 startups that are all trying to solve this problem. And then you realize like when you go out into the real world and stuff, actually people are busy. Like they don't need this stuff. Like people share events on Facebook, and you don't really need like, very rarely are you in a place where you're like, I need to, I need to open an app just to see a feed of events so I can go
Okay.
like
Yeah, yeah.
how
So
often
like
are you going to do that?
it's like a semi problem, but not a
It's like,
problem
yeah,
problem.
it's
Yeah.
it's exactly like it's not a problem that people are going to use a lot, pay for,
So
or really
it has to be
need.
like a brick wall problem where you can't get through this problem versus like I can open the fence gate and walk through it or walk around the
Yeah,
fence, or it's a very low
yeah,
fence to hop
totally.
over kind of a problem.
It has to be painful enough for people to be like, fine, I'm gonna find a solution to this problem. Oh, cool, Gumroad exists,
Yeah.
like otherwise it's like, oh, it's kind of annoying, but it's like whatever. And I only have to do it like once every year. So like it's like paying taxes sucks. But guess what? Like you do it once a year, and by the time you're like thinking about it, you're like, it's too late to build anything to solve this problem. So I might as well use TurboTax or
TurboTax. Yeah.
whatever. And
TurboTax
then like
solves
you're
it.
done and you're like, I don't want to think about that shit for another year anyway. So like, you know, it turns out it's just not that big of a problem, and it's not frequent enough that people are really gonna, that sort of brick wall thing doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Achieve that.
I can't on that subject. I can't believe TurboTax is like doing a function that the government should be doing and making like bajillion dollars every year. It's like that should just be standard.
It is a little weird.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is a little weird.
Okay. Also, I want to talk about your Medium post for a second. Like, you talked about this billion or bust goal, kind of this mentality, and I was just wondering, most people don't have that mentality. So where did you first get exposed to that? And like, where did that come from?
It's just like it's in the water of Silicon Valley. Like, you go there to build $1 billion company or try, it's like you go there, you raise money from VCs that have invested in Google and Amazon and Netflix and Apple.
But what about even before you got to Silicon Valley? Because you're not from there, right? You ended up traveling there for that specific purpose. So how did you even get that idea to travel there?
Yeah, I think so architecture was the thing for a bit, right? And then I learned about iOS apps and started making, iPhone apps and stuff in high school. And I just was like, wait a second, like, technology is really cool. I can just do this. People can pay me money for these apps directly. And then I never have to work for anybody, or like, I don't, I can, it's like, it's fun and I get paid, basically. Like, that's a nice thing. And then I just started following people in tech and like learning about this kind of industry that was pretty nascent at the time. And realized like this is all happening in like one place, it's not like you're learning about finance and it's just like, oh, it's all over the place. It's like literally are all within like a 40-mile radius.
Yeah, that's weird.
Of Stanford University, right? And so, and there's a reason for that. We can get into like the history of it if people are curious. But basically, I was like, I need to be here because like something is literally in the water that like Facebook and like Twitter and Square and Dropbox and like so many companies are all here. Google and just like an insane amount. And so, and they were all trying to do that. The thing is, like, there are a lot, obviously most people don't have this idea. Most businesses are not going to be $1 billion businesses. Very few will, but those are the things that you see because they're like the big headlines, right? People want to write about the Uber and the WeWork and the the big IPOs and Zoom stock going crazy and Tesla and like. So it's just like what people read about. It's the stuff. It's like clickbait based.
It's interesting that so you kind of like found it from the internet and just on your own by yourself. Like you weren't born into that world or anything. Like it just like you were doing programming in high school. I'm assuming like you didn't have classes for programming in high school, did you?
There was one, but it wasn't like iOS program. It was like learning C. Or Java or
okay, so
like that.
Basically my idea is like any random person in the world with the internet connection could have done this type of thing, like starting from somewhere. And
I think so it gets controversial. It can get a touchy subject, but so my sort of like quick pithy thing would be like, yes, basically anyone in the world with access to the internet can go do this. And maybe my more nuanced version would be like, I grew up relatively privileged and like I had a laptop and a computer and like, like there are a lot of things that that do prevent people from doing it. And I also had like, my mom was like very encouraging of all this kind of stuff where like maybe like someone else's parents would not be, And so there was a lot of that too. But yeah, really like, it's funny. Like I learned to code Python before I built Gumroad, like 6 months before I built Gumroad. And people ask me all the time, they're like, how did you learn to code Python? And I'm like, I literally, if you want the true honest answer, not being sarcastic, not trying to be a dick, but like, I literally Googled like, how to learn Python. And then I clicked like the first 10 results. And then I found one that was a good tutorial. And then guess what? Like you made a painting app, right? Most painters would be like, how the heck did you do that? And like, you can tell people roughly the steps that you went through and you break it down and it actually it's like, oh yeah, you did this and you did this. Like there's this game engine and like you're basically rendering shapes that are, on a certain path and you can like but like a lot of people, they just don't start. Like they're just like, this thing is so difficult, so I'm not even going to Google how to learn to code. I'm going to go ask Sahil because he can explain to me all the steps. But it's like, no, you just start, like it's like painting was like this for me, right? I was like, how do I learn to paint? I have no clue. I have to get brushes and substrates, canvases, a medium potentially, like all these things, like how to like, and then I went to the art store and I like just asked someone, I was like, what do I need to paint? And he's like, well, you need, white, yellow, red, blue. And I was like, oh yeah, of course. That's like what you learn in middle school. Turns out professional painters are basically doing exactly what like elementary school painters are doing. They're just a little bit better at it, right?
It's a little bit more sophisticated, but yeah.
But you start there, and then you can learn about like you need a red, a warm red and a cool red, and like and you can get into that kind of stuff. But like you don't need to know about like yellow ochre to like get started painting. The important thing is you start.
I do find that a lot. I find that a lot with even just teaching classes and things like people like to ask questions without doing a cursory Google search. They don't Google it first. And
it's so frustrating, man.
It's frustrating, but it's also like, man, if I could teach this, if this person could just do that for everything in their life, they'd go so much farther. And it's such a simple little thing that I don't know why people avoid it. But I think
it's people are scared, I think, but like it is intimidating. Like it's uncomfortable to learn a new skill, That's why the nice thing about being in a physical class with other peers is you have like kind of like that peer pressure and accountability and things like that, because like as you mentioned, like it's like if you can buy like in something else that I was like a Gumroad product of yours, you're like, hey, you made it to the end. Very few people do, because like it takes a lot of effort and time to like go all through like a 2 or 6 hour video and build it all and things like that. People just get busy, they have other things going on, and but you're totally right. Like if you want to learn how to make a movie, like you can make a, maybe not a Marvel quality movie, but you can make the equivalent of like the best movie CGI wise 20 years ago with like tools that everyone has access to for free right now, right? Like you could probably make like a 1 minute sort of video that is like Matrix level quality today. That's like the beauty of innovation and technology. You'd have to learn a lot of stuff to do that. You'd have to learn a lot, but I really believe you could render the scene. You could figure that out. You could film it on your iPhone or get a camera or whatever. Like you could rotoscope. There's like,
It's pretty exciting.
You can do this. You can make Spider-Verse. It would just take you a lifetime, or 50 lifetimes. Which guess what? That's what Spider-Verse did. They just hired 100 people or 200 people, 300 people, and each person did a little bit. But like, it's when people realize that, I think it's a huge deal. I think when for me, it was like when I realized like Facebook and Microsoft are like just people like me with a laptop building stuff, and it just scaled over time. So it also just gives you less excuses, because you're like, oh, I don't actually need like a better computer. I don't need, a bunch of money. Those are just excuses.
So let's say, I think that's a really important thing to realize that these people that are doing these great things are just regular people, or like maybe you're like, oh wow, that guy's a dummy and look what he did, or
totally.
Something like that. So you get to Silicon Valley, and then you use your magic trick of like meeting a bunch of people right away. So like, who are some of the first people, like what are the most surprising people that you met like really early on in out there?
Yeah, I mean, I can name drop a list of people, but like I know like Kevin, who started Instagram, Kevin Systrom, and Adam, who started Quora. I know the Patrick and John, who started Stripe. Obviously I know Ben, who's the CEO of Pinterest. I know Drew, who started Dropbox.
So it's like everybody. It's all the
basically. I don't know Mark Zuckerberg, and I don't know Elon Musk, and I don't know Peter Thiel, but basically everybody else. Roughly, And again, it's not like it's like literally you go into the industry, you do the work, you build stuff that people find interesting. It's literally their job to meet with aspiring founders and things like that.
Yeah.
I believe the same thing in Hollywood. Like, give me enough time in Hollywood and I will know. I mean, I already know a lot of people, but I could meet anybody.
That's
I can meet
a
Kevin
really
Feige. I can,
huge superpower actually, because I mean, I know most of the artists that are working here, like we just have our little friend group and we don't really try to reach out of it. Like we don't, I mean,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So that's a really great thing,
yeah.
actually.
You just
Um,
gotta do it, But it's just like yeah. I think people are blown away. Like the email is like the best thing ever, because literally everyone reads all of their email roughly every day or two, So
yeah.
if you want, like, I know for like I don't know if I can meet Ken Feige, but I could 100% get him to read some words that I wrote because I can get his email. I'm sure I could get his email. That's not hard to find. I'm sure I could find it. And then
Mhm.
I just send him an email. And guess what? He will read the email and he will choose to respond or not, right? Like anyone can send me an email. I read all my
Yeah.
emails and I respond to any that are worth responding to, but like I read them all. And like if I have a really interesting project or like an interesting thing or whatever, like or some connection or whatever, like he'll take the meeting. It's an hour of his time, like what's he doing right now anyways,
Right, right. Yeah, sometimes you think of these people like their day must be planned down to the millisecond, and like
Yeah.
each bite they take at lunch is a scheduled event. But it's like
Yeah, it's really no.
they're probably
It's
just
actually the opposite
they're
is what I
probably on
found.
Twitter anyway, right?
Yeah, they're messing around on Twitter all the time. Totally. I mean, I found that
That's what you're doing.
yeah, that's definitely what I'm doing. I'll speak for myself, but like, uh, the truth is like the most successful people are actually like the least busy because that's what being successful gets you. Actually, you can stop filling your calendar with bullshit. Like the most successful CEOs I meet are like they have 3 or 4 hours free a day because they have to do deep work. They have to think. They have to like and that doesn't happen by like just like scheduling your calendar full of stuff. And even then, if you do that, you still have downtime. You still have time that you have to go to the bathroom. You have to like you have weekends and things like that. Like this is time that in general the CEOs that I really admire, like they like working, they like doing stuff, so they're typically like on Twitter, they're reading stuff, or they're whatever. Like everyone has free time. I don't know anyone that like is so
Yeah,
productive that they literally like just don't have free time. Like everyone I know watches Game of Thrones or this or that or whatever. It's like
yeah.
that's a lot of hours. So
We're all
like clearly,
human. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, we're all human. Like no one works that. Like maybe there's some people, but like even Elon Musk, like he'll go out to dinner for like a 4-hour dinner. So clearly he has the time.
Yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah, so you've met a few of these like uh billionaire people, and this
Yeah,
is kind of just like a fun question, like what do billionaires do for fun?
dude, this is terrible, dude. It's so boring. Uh, this is why like I mean, literally, I don't know. I don't know that many billionaires, right? So I know maybe like 5 or 6 or something.
Oh, only just fun.
Um, it's, but it's all like illiquid, right? It's like because they own like a good
Oh,
chunk
right,
of
right,
a
right.
company, right? So it's not like the billionaire that like is on TV, right? Which is like they own a yacht and they're like doing like
Yeah,
entertainment billionaires are very different, I think.
yeah.
Like
More
obviously,
spendy, right? More
and
spendy
and
type.
also and honestly, like those people often they don't spend a lot of their own money. Like they kind of make it work so that they're like someone else is paying them and it's a sponsorship and this and that.
Yeah.
But like at least the people I know, like the fanciest thing is like to go out to dinner, eat a nice, 3 Michelin starred meal like in San Francisco for like $300 a head,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Okay.
by the way something that like a lot of people could do if they want to, right? Like
Right, right, right.
it's not like you don't need to be making millions
Yeah.
and millions and millions of dollars to do
So,
that kind of stuff.
okay,
Sometimes they have really nice houses and but
but it's generally chill.
they have a Tesla.
It's not like super ultra extravagant or anything like
It's
crazy.
honestly like culturally looked down upon to actually do any of that kind of stuff,
Right, 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 right.
So like
Yeah, yeah. I get
there's
that feeling
they
definitely.
might do it, they just don't tell anyone.
Yeah. I get that feeling from you definitely. Like, you got your older model MacBook and your regular stuff and blah blah blah. And so
Yeah.
I guess another question I had is like when you did have that idea of taking Gumroad to be really big with the venture capital and all that, what would that big money enable you to do with Gumroad that you wouldn't be able to do with a small team like how you have it now?
Yeah. And, a lot of VCs, because Gumroad had a big spike because of COVID, there are a lot of people who are like, hey, do you want to raise money again? We'll see. I don't know the answer to that question. Probably not, but we'll see. But it's just like, do I think basically the way I think about it is there a really large market? Is it roughly is there a closing window? So this, like, not because the market is going away, but because like someone else is going to take it, so like Patreon or some other competitor of ours. And is it a time, like, is it something that we have to do within 2-3 years before somebody else grabs it, and like, so we could totally do it, like, just like I mentioned, right? Like a team of 10 could make Spider-Verse. It would just take 50 years or something,
Yeah.
or 100 years or whatever, right? I'm simplifying. Obviously, no one should try to make no one would actually be able to do that, but like, that kind of man-hour kind of equivalent. So it's really just like, it's just time and speed. It's just like, how fast do you want to move? And do you really think, like, in the beginning days, I raised $10 million. And the reason was like, I thought it was a huge market that was going to change overnight. Right. Which is often, like, I found that that's like a mistake. That's like a bias that I have, is like, I think the world's going to shift a lot sooner than it does. Like, this shift that's now happening, I feel like was, with creator economy and all these kind of things people are talking about. I thought that was going to happen in like 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And that normally happens with tech people because we're so far, like, I was using Instagram in 2010. Like, you're so far, you're thinking, you're kind of
you're in the future. Yeah, you're in the future.
You're kind of
already.
there, like, it's like you and Blender, it's like, you can kind of see where the animation industry is going to go in 10 years.
Yeah.
But like, there's a lot of inertia. There's a lot of things that have to slowly change, and like security protocols and humans learning new software and stuff like that. It just takes a lot of time. But like, I can tell you that, like, yeah, you will be able to make Toy Story by yourself in 50 years, maybe by even just like typing like a script and it would just auto do it. Like, this is all going to happen. This is like the beauty of technology and innovation and compounding growth. And it just takes time. Like, these innovations kind of, compound on top of each other. But yeah, to your point, I just want to add the equivalent of like this kind of like billionaires that don't really do anything. It reminds me of sometimes when I meet painters, because it was similar. It's like, oh, I can finally see how like this amazing painter, like Ro Lee or like Josh Clare or like whatever, paints. It's going to blow my mind. And then you just watch them do it. And because you're watching them do every single stroke, you're like, I could do that. And they're using they're using roughly the same color palette everyone else uses. They're using someone might be using different brushes, like what, but roughly it's the same kind of thing. And then you're like, oh, I've learned, I know how to do it. And then you do it and you're like, oh, it's really hard. But like, it's just like, just like billionaires have old cars or whatever. It's just like, like Josh Clare has like these like terrible things that he buys from like Hobby Lobby to paint with. But because like the magic is in his head,
Yeah. I really love when artists will like have especially shitty tools just to not piss people off, but to be like, hey, look, it's not the tools. It's like, look how shitty my tools are, and I can do this.
And obviously, tools are important, right? Like, you don't want to totally dismiss them. Like, you built a tool that obviously like lets you paint in a very different way than you can with like Procreate or Photoshop or whatever. But yeah, basically, you can I think a lot of people think that like you can. It would be like, I can buy better running shoes and it's going to make me a better runner. It's like marginally it will, maybe. Like,
not really.
but not really. Yeah. And like, and frankly, like, you're making excuses for like not going on a run. Like, just run more and you will be, you will get better much faster than any running shoes.
So, okay. So do you have any favorite art tutorials on Gumroad that you've watched?
I like Zach Rett's stuff quite a bit.
Ah, nice.
He's solid. I like his style a lot. I like Sparth's stuff too. Sparth stuff is a little frustrating because it's like, I feel like I don't understand what he's doing. It's like a little he's too good almost, I like your 3D stuff a lot. I like Kalen Chalk stuff. Yeah, it's all great.
Nice.
It's really, I think the cool thing is like, and a lot of it is like you just watch people paint and then you kind of maybe learn a couple secrets and like kind of cool things that they do. But then you realize like it's just work. It's just mileage mostly, you
Yeah.
know. It's a lot of, it's like I actually think a lot of the content on Gumroad, I categorize it as like inspirational more than educational sometimes, where it's like really cool to see, oh, that's how they do it. But also like it's just work. It's like it
Yeah, yeah.
takes 20 hours and it's like when you know, who's like the famous people guy everyone references, like Craig Mullins. He's
Craig
like the most
Mullins, yeah,
amazing
yeah.
whatever, right? Like,
Hmm.
and it's like you can go buy schoolism thing and like watch him do a thing. But you're probably not going to learn anything crazy from that. Like it's just he's really good. He's done it a lot.
Yeah.
There's you know,
He's a
maybe
good
you
teacher,
disagree.
though.
Do you disagree? Tell me.
Oh, I think so. There's actually a guy, a student of his in the Warrior Painters, and he's popped up too. But the student was giving us some tips, late night tips about like how he constructs stuff and thinks about the planes and things and makes things really simplified. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
But
I
one
think
one
yeah.
one weird thing about the these like master artists that maybe I wonder if maybe it's different. Like you're saying that these startup guys that are really successful, they end up kind of making more time for themselves and that they can like do other stuff. But it seems like the artists, like the more when they're up there, they're just working all the time. Like the people that like in order to get there, they already had to have that kind of crazy work ethic, and then they're like kind of stuck in that forever. Like they keep
Yeah.
going in order to keep like it's more like an athlete type of thing. Like they got to keep their muscles all
Yeah, it is.
going.
It does feel like athletes for sure. I think that's a really good analogy. Yeah, I wonder if that's what they really want or if they just don't know how to like escape it because it feels like you have to start from the beginning again, right? Because like if you're like Craig Mullins and you're like, I'm gonna go do some IP, like you're gonna it's gonna take a lot of effort, you know, where it's so easy for him to just do a client job that's like, I gotta work on Star Wars, you know, and like do some cool shit.
I guess I
Yeah.
can't speak for them, but I feel like for a lot of artists, like the joy is that
Yeah.
athletic
Just to
part, the
do.
training,
Yeah.
the grind. Like
You just want to be the best,
that's
you know?
actually that's what it's about.
And I think that's great. Yeah. I mean, you know, no one has to start a business or do whatever, right?
Yeah,
Like John Singer Sargent, I think is a phenomenal painter. And I would love to over time get closer and closer and closer to painting like him over time. Um, and that's fine. You know, I probably will never get close, but you know, it's fine.
I
Um,
I thought it was interesting with Sargent how I didn't realize this, but then I saw online that he had like 3,000 oil paintings and then like 5,000 watercolor paintings or something like that. I was like, wow, okay, that's a number that you can kind of sort of wrap your head around to say like
yeah, totally.
if I did that, maybe I could be there. Like it would take
The
a
thing
long
is, you
time.
don't know, right? Like the truth is, like, and I would love to figure this out because I would love for someone to be able to tell me if you invest 10,000 hours of your life, this is how good you will be.
Yeah.
Like, because no, like no one, there could be people that are sort of have the capacity in their brain, body, whatever, to paint much better than Sargent. I mean, statistically, it's almost 100% likely that there's someone out there. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are potential have the potential to be better painters than him,
Yeah.
especially with the internet and other things, right? Um, but like those people aren't going to know unless they really kind of put in the
Yeah.
work,
I think
right?
that most people get eliminated because they're not doing that number, basically. That
A
number of
hundred
paintings.
percent. Yeah, I think I've done maybe like 400 or 500 paintings in my life, maybe if
Hey,
that.
that's a pretty good start.
So it's like I'm 10% of the way there or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, like and that's kind of what I did. I was like, I basically did the math because they're art schools, so they're schools that kind of have a pattern of like how many hours you kind of have to do before you're graduate, and that's when you're going to get a job. So you can kind of reverse engineer the math. And for me, it was around 4,000 hours to be a professional enough. Um, and then
Yeah.
you do the math, like how long does a plein air painting take? You know, you can kind of figure out like, okay, it's going to be this many paintings I got to do, and how many weeks, and how you can kind of be like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, two a week, 3 a week, blah blah blah.
The engineer learns how to paint.
Yeah, it's like a very engineering. It's
Oh man.
that's how I think. I
Um,
mean, I think about it writing. I can tell you the same thing. It's like people tell you in writing 500,000 to a million words, before you become
Jeez.
published.
Oh God.
Yeah. A lot of people think they should defy the odds and that they're exceptional. But for me, I'm like, look, I'm just going to assume I'm average, and average looks like 500,000 to a million words. And so am I willing to do that?
Yeah.
No. Okay, then I won't, you know,
Yeah.
that's fine. But like,
And I think it's also nice because then you don't have to feel bad about yourself until you've done that many paintings or you've done that many words. You know, like you're supposed to be worse. Like, you know, it puts
yeah,
a scale on
exactly.
it.
But when people are like, I'm not good enough, I'm like, okay, well, how many hours of painting have you done? You know,
Yeah, it's very simple.
and it's like, oh, you're done it for a year and you're sad. Like, you can look at like, go find some of these people's earliest work when they were like, sophomores in art school.
Yeah.
A lot of it is way worse than the stuff you're doing, honestly. Like I've seen some of like Corey Loftus' early work and stuff. I'm like, this is disgusting.
Oh,
Like he would have been on the bottom rung of I mean,
damn.
I've definitely seen, I don't want to use his name particularly. He's a great person, but like, there are a lot of artists that like really like they're some of the most successful people in the industry. But if you look at their student work, you would not have expected it, because normally there's the students in your class that you're like, this person's clearly going to be
No, that definitely
right.
happens because if someone comes in like really talented and then all the teachers are like, oh, wow, look how great that guy is. Everyone should paint like that. And then that person becomes kind of like lazy and relaxed. And then all the
Yeah,
other guys are like, why is this so hard? And they're struggling. And then they just like,
it's about how fast can you get
they
better.
go, yeah.
That's It's not about how good you are. It's like because yeah, it's like if you go to my Twitter and go to @SHL Paints, you'll find like a progress sort of
Yeah.
thing. And in like 2 years, I got pretty good because I was just like I was really bad. That helps. The best way to improve
Yeah.
is to start really bad. Um, and then I just did it a lot. I
Yeah.
did it for like 20 hours a week for 2 years. Turns out most people don't do that.
Right.
So it works.
Okay.
Turns out.
I have just a couple more questions, like actually one more. So before, for people that are like just getting into Gumroad, do you have any general advice for, having a good start or um, having success on Gumroad for
Yeah, I
beginners?
mean it's really tricky. Um, it's really hard. Can you still hear me, by the way? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, I'm charging one AirPod at a time, but
Okay.
as it goes. But yeah, it's honestly the number one thing is to provide value for free. It kind of sounds weird, but like just to like post a lot of content on social media, build an audience, either on social media through your email list or your blog or some channel that people are using to follow you, and then just be really helpful. Like just share your learnings all the time, share your work, share a little like Procreate speed, that video thing that they do for you automatically. Build an audience, and then when you have 1,000 people who follow you and like really like your work, then you release like a $10 or $20 whatever like more produced thing. And a lot of, I think people would think like the way I make a lot of money is I make like the best quality stuff on Gumroad, and it's like phenomenal, and like that's important. But like if you really think about like what you purchase, like it's often like when I was saying like my favorite people, I wasn't really saying like these are the best products on Gumroad. I was like, these are my favorite artists that happen to be on Gumroad, And so it's like, just be a really good artist and like learn, go down the rabbit hole I was mentioning before, like go find something interesting that nobody's doing really. Like Zach Retz has a great thing about like using 3D and like skyscrapers, to generate these skyscraper scenes and stuff that I assume he had to learn because it was part of his job at Spider-Verse or whatever. And then he turned it into a Gumroad video that was educational for a lot of people, right? You did this with like a lot of Blender stuff and continue to do. One of the really exciting things, not to give you more competition, but like one of the really exciting things about Blender is that it's moving really fast.
Yeah,
So it's
definitely.
like if you're on the cutting edge, you're always going to have new content, and you're always going to have people who are like, hey, I need a thing that teaches me about like all this new stuff that just came out last year, right? And so you're able to, it's basically arbitrage. Like you find the thing that a lot of people want, and then just be like the person who's actually going to go get it, like the sail across the ocean, find the treasure, and like bring it back and be like,
Yeah,
hey, it's $20, but like I'm, instead of spending
yeah,
hours and trying all these different things and dealing with all this crappy UI and stuff, like I'm going to go do the work for you.
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna simplify your life a little bit.
It is a
Um,
double-edged sword though, because if it's moving fast, it means like there's lots of cool new features all the time, but at the same time, all your older stuff becomes obsolete much faster.
that's
So,
true.
so it's
Yeah.
like at some points I wish like, oh, I wish I was doing figure drawing or painting or something kind of more, concrete that would last forever kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, a lot of it is like figuring out like what's your shtick, right? Like what are you really, and that's part of finding out your, like a lot of students, they're like, I need a style. It's like, no, you just got to paint a lot and then it'll be really obvious like what your fingerprint is, like, over
mhm.
time. And then you get really good at it, and then you make products that teach people. Like there's this artist I work with on the Gumroad and stuff, James Gilliard on Twitter. He's amazing, right? He
Oh
does the
yeah,
cool.
love the
And guess
geometric.
what? That guy's killing it. I don't even know what his numbers are, but I assume he's killing it because guess what? He's the best in the world at that style,
Mm.
right? And so people are, Sparth is kind of the same thing, right? Like similar style, a little different. Definitely, you can tell the two apart. But like they found their thing that they're really good at, and like people will pay a lot of money. Like who's that guy who does all those pen drawings? Ian McHugh,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Another one like who will do really well, right? Jake Parker, like Corey
Yeah.
Loftus, like these people have Scott Robertson, very very distinct. Peter Han, right? Like you have
Yeah.
very distinct styles. Anthony
Hmm.
Jones, like Kalen Chalk. The
Yeah.
cool thing about art is like you will do it is impossible not to because there's so many ways of drawing the same thing. So a lot of it is like getting really, really deep on something and then figuring out how to teach people how to do that thing, right? So I think a
Okay.
lot of people are like, I'm going to teach people how to do like an oil painting still life because like that has the widest audience, like people who are just starting. But it's like, no, actually what you should do is you should be like, I'm going to teach you how to paint like, I don't know, something incredibly specific, like succulents or something,
Yeah.
and like get really into it and be like, this is the science behind it. This is like the genetic tree that leads to these weird phenomena, and like I'm going to teach
Oh
you how to do
yeah.
this, and then you
Michelle
can
would be
invent.
into this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right.
She would
and
she would
so
get that one. Yeah.
and so
Um
like
yeah.
it's like people think, oh, like this audience is massive, and then because it's so broad no one buys it, but like if you're specific, then Michelle's like, oh, that's obviously I'm going to get that
A lot of people like succulents actually. There's a whole succulent dark web.
one.
I don't know. They're
Succulent
they're
dark
all they're
web.
all down. They're all hiding, and they all crawl out like whenever somebody posts a plant. They're all like, ah!
That's hilarious.
Um, did you expect that Gumroad would be so much education stuff
No,
as it is now? Or is it
no,
even
honestly.
mostly education, or is it mostly other stuff?
It's a good chunk of it now. It's probably like 40-50. It's a plurality at this point. It just happened, like we just
Yeah.
built it. And I personally thought like a lot of music sales, like a lot of art, like art, a lot of source files, like source music, source
Yeah.
PDF, PSDs, things like that. Yeah, education was surprising to me. And definitely an assumption that I sort of, and like you look at Patreon, like people are like, oh, Patreon's for patronage. It's like, no, it's really just a lot of educators in
Yeah.
different forms,
Yeah.
and that's why like we're making a huge investment in the next 6 months in like the course format on Gumroad, so that will be really good over time.
Nice.
um
That's really exciting to hear.
yeah, it's gonna be I don't know what it looks like, we haven't designed it yet, but like once we launch memberships completely, which will hopefully happen in the next couple months, like that's going to be our main focus, and it's going to be pretty awesome.
Nice.
As everyone knows, Gumroad's pretty cool. So like, whatever we do, it's
It'll be
normally
great.
when Gumroad sucks, it's not normally because we suck. It's just because we actually just don't do it.
Yeah.
That's normally the complaint people have is like Gumroad doesn't do X instead of like Gumroad is bad at X, right? Which means we're a little slower than, but like yeah, it'll be great when we do it by the end of the year. But yeah,
Cool.
it's
All right, that sounds good.
yeah.
I got some questions from Kaylee from the audience. Let's see. So I think who is this? Kevin? Yeah, Kevin Burke is saying, I'm selling animation software. How would you recommend marketing on Gumroad, and what are some ways to be seen? Oh, I guess that's kind of what we just covered, but marketing on Gum. So I guess like having a free version or
Yeah,
or
free can
stuff.
help too. Yeah, free can help for sure. Yeah, having free products, like they're called lead magnets in like the kind of like startup-y term for it. But basically you have like a free thing that is, like a small thing that you use to basically collect emails, and they enter in their email. They don't have to enter in a credit card on Gumroad. They just hit 0. Or a lot of people now, we have versions, so you can say, look, the free version is this, it's 0, but you can pay $5 or whatever. And then you collect a bunch of emails, and then you have an email list of people who, by the way, they've already benefited from your free content, right? So they're going to be much more likely to give you money when you have like a premium version of this. But really, it's just building an audience of people who, can say, hey, this person helped me. And like, now that they have a product for sale, like, I'm going to go buy it. I might not even want to watch it right now, but I'm going to buy it. So like one day when I have free time, I'm going to do that, and I see a lot of that happen.
Yeah. What are some ways you seem to be successful? Oh, I guess that's a similar.
There's a really good guy, Jing Sketch. I would check out his account, JINGSKETCH, on Gumroad. He has really beautiful product pages, and he's really into Facebook ads and stuff. Like, he's had enough sales organically now that he's now basically figured out like his cost of customer acquisition. And like he there's a video, if you Google like Gumroad, Sahil, Facebook, Jing Sketch or whatever, you'll find a YouTube video where he goes through his Facebook ad setup. Because we now have like Facebook pixel support. So you basically just give us your Facebook pixel, and then you can start doing lookalike audiences. And basically to simplify that, thanks Michelle for putting that in the chat, but like basically Facebook is way too good at knowing who is similar to your customer base. So what you can say to Facebook is like, hey, these are my customers, which we'll tell Facebook for you if you do that. Find more of these people, and then tell them to buy my product. And so you basically spend $5 to sell a $10 product, and then you can kind of start building a flywheel of that over time. So that works really well. And then cross marketing does work as well. It's always better to like have sales first and like be successful on your own, but then reach out to people in your network and your community and like do cross-selling and affiliate. There's an affiliates feature that we have, so you can say, hey, if you sell my product, you get 50%. If I sell your product, I get 50% of yours, and you'll promote mine and I'll promote yours. It's not really a zero-sum game. People are always buying more stuff. People want to learn, and so and people have spent thousands of dollars on art schools. So like, they'll spend $5 to $10 on like new brushes, new videos, new this, new that. Basically forever. One really good example of someone who uses Gumroad that I like a lot is Foundation Patreon. John Park and his buddy Matt Zickery and stuff. Like, they're really, I really liked it because I was like, oh, I can go to Art Center for free or very cheap, right? Because it's basically like that kind of curriculum, and it's like
orange,
and it's just like a ton of work. It's like, do 100 thumbnail sketches or whatever. That's a lot. So I like their stuff. That was really helpful for me getting started to really wrap my head around like how much work it's going to be to get good. I don't really have a preference on like what I want to see more of, honestly. Like, I just want to see more. The more the merrier. Like, I like, there's lots of cool spirituality stuff, like physical wellness stuff, mental health stuff, yoga, meditation, cooking, dance, theater. There's a lot of financial stuff now too. So there's like a lot of financial sort of wellness products. I don't know what you call that, but like, how to invest well and like things like that. But they're all sort of pseudo educational products. There's a lot of software people sell, like Heavypoly, like that kind of stuff where people sell like apps and things. Those can kind of reach pretty massive scale. What else people sell? Books, a lot of, ebooks and courses and stuff. Courses is going to be the big one. And then when we launch memberships, I hope to see a lot of people sort of use memberships.
What's one of the most weird or surprising products that you've ever seen?
There's a lot of adult content or pseudo adult content that I'm like, this is not adult, but like has a weird vibe around it. And it's like, I just think I've learned running, I'm in Pinterest, I learned this too, but when you're building, the cool thing about the internet is you can meet your people, right? You can find your 1,000 customers, your true fans or whatever, right? You can find your group, especially like you might, if you're a painter in LA, there are a lot of painters in LA, but if you're in the middle of nowhere, you're like, man, I wish I lived near another painter I could go paint with or whatever. And the internet's cool about that, but it also means like you learn that there are a lot of weird people, not weird people, but people like people have their own things going on. Like humans
Yeah,
are
right.
very diverse and
It's
very
a nice way
interesting.
of putting it. Yeah, true.
So when you help people, upload and connect with those with people, people like that, people like-minded people, and also sell content to those people, like you find out like a lot of interesting things. Like Vor, for example, is like a thing that I learned about
What is that?
a year or two ago. Vor, VORE. It's again, it's not adult content technically,
Just
but
yeah.
it's someone, it's like someone, it's videos of animation, eating, of people eating other people in a
Whoa.
very non-violent way.
Oh. Hmm.
Yeah. So it's like, it's like if there was a person, I just went,
Like sushi or something.
yeah, exactly.
All right. Like okay.
I don't know. I don't know what,
Interesting.
why, what, who, why. I don't know.
That's new.
But and it's one of those things where it's like there's nothing. Yeah, it's kind of new, or at least it's new.
New to me.
New to me, exactly. I don't know. I have no idea. I have a friend of mine who sells a lot of this kind of content. He kills it. I mean, you wouldn't imagine. And it's just, just like a fetish, I guess, right? It's a kink or something. And like, I actually am glad, because it's like this person, he spoke at one of our Gumroad creator dinners, and it was really cool because he was like, look, I have this thing that I've always kind of been ashamed about. And like, but like, I've always also like, it's cool that I can make a living like doing this and not feeling guilty about it. I can meet my people and like have a community and like make a living,
Yeah.
and to show other people that this is like a thing that's, it is what it is,
Hmm.
it's, no one's getting hurt. No one's getting, breaking the law or anything. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there's a lot of that. Like there's a lot of weird, like just videos of people like trapped under couches and stuff. And you're like, it's like me under a couch trapped for an hour. And it's just like,
Oh shit.
I assume someone's into that. There's nothing sexual about it, by the way. Like nothing. It's just someone obviously pretending, right? Like they're filming themselves. But like, it's just
That's
some group of people are into that. I don't know.
interesting.
But it's
Dang.
also cool. Like to me, honestly, it's cool in a way, because it's like now they don't have to tell anyone. They don't have to go anywhere. They can just go to, they can find this person. I assume they follow them on, some social media platform or something. They, buy $5-10 worth of content directly from this person. They get all the money. They don't have to tell anyone. And then they just, I don't know what they do with this content, but no one gets hurt. No one, I don't know. The alternative might be worse, So
Huh.
yeah, there's just like lots of weird kind of stuff like that. I've heard Patreon is a huge amount of Patreon is stuff like that as well. You just
Yeah,
don't
because
see it that much because you don't want to
it's
tell, you don't want to
also
promote that kind of stuff.
it's kind of like it's like a even more private area of the internet, because the only people that are going in there are like, the ones that are really invested in it. They're paying for it. They really want to be there. So it's like,
Yeah. And
it's just kind of
yeah,
private. Yeah.
totally. It's not like a leaderboard where,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, another question. What's a book you read that helped you with getting started with building businesses or educational resources?
So I'm writing a book,
All right.
actually.
He
It
read his
turns
own
out,
book. Yeah.
yeah, I read my own book. I know. I'm like, I might as well shill for my own book. Honestly, the best books, I'm trying to think. I don't know if I like there are a lot of books that I read about growing businesses, like once you have a team and stuff, like about management, like High Output Management is a really great book on that. Um, but honestly, books are sometimes not the best, because the problem with the book, even though I'm writing a book, so hopefully I'm like I'm not really good at still selling my own book right now. But like the cool thing, honestly, is like you just need to start building a business. Like it sounds weird, but like just start whatever that is. And typically, by the way, if you're already selling on Gumroad, effectively you have a business, right? At this point, even if you might be making $5 a month, like you have a business. Um, and then over time, it just grows. It just like becomes bigger. You have more products, you have more sales, and eventually you're like, I probably need to start like an LLC or a C corp or something, because tax reasons or liability reasons. So then you just do that, and then you might have like an employee that helps you do this and that, or like it happens very organically. Um, but there's like a great company called Stripe that I mentioned before. They have a product called Stripe Atlas that helps people start businesses, and they have a ton of content. So if you just Google like Stripe Atlas and see their content marketing, they have tons of content on like how to start a business and like how to, it's more directed at tech startups.
It's pretty cool.
But they have a lot of really good stuff.
And
what else?
You guys are, well, I don't know, but it seems like you might want to like help teach people to do this kind of stuff. I mean, because it's in Gumroad's best interest for the creators to have at least to help them to have their business go better. So I like this idea of having the book, having the Twitter stuff, all this like little tidbits to help everybody along and all grow.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I said before. It's like so much of it is inspirational, because like once you get started, then you'll start being able to find the content that you need to solve the problem, But like when I describe Gumroad to people, like Gumroad is just still a very simple business, right? We have a software product, which is like a bunch of code that we deploy to a set of servers hosted by Amazon. People visit pages on that server or set of servers, buy products, or list products. Other people buy products, share link, those people list products and share those URLs, and then people visit those URLs, and then, they enter in their credit card information, and then that money goes into one of our bank accounts basically. And then we, account for all of it. And then we pay people once a week. And then we have some accounting. But really our team is like, we do customer support. This is the whole company. It's me. I just do random stuff. Then there's like design, which is like, people here are probably quite familiar with. And there's the engineers who like make the product better and build features and fix bugs and scale the thing so it doesn't go down or something like that. And then there's like a customer support team that does customer support. When you email support@gumroad.com, like they reply back to you. There's risk. So like as new people get onboarded, like we make sure that they're not fraudulent basically.
Yeah.
And then there's a little bit of social media kind of content, PR kind of stuff that we're starting to invest in a little bit. But like, that's it. That's Gumroad,
Yeah.
And we do $10 million a year in revenue, doubling every year, which isn't to brag or anything. It's just like, it is what it is. Like you can, the beauty of software, the beauty of where we're currently at as humanity is you can kind of get to this scale with like a very, very, we don't have an office. We don't have really any of that kind of stuff. We have like a Slack. Basically, we have a Slack. We have a Notion, which is like a wiki software, and we use GitHub for our code management. Yeah. And that's about, and then obviously we have a bunch of other tiny tools, but like roughly that's it.
Yeah, you were pre-set up for the virus and everything. Huh? So.
Yeah, we didn't have to do anything really different when the virus hit. We're just like, oh, cool. We'll just keep working. Obviously, it wasn't easy because you're like watching all the news and there's that kind of existential stuff going on. But sort of like process-wise, nothing changed.
Yeah. I feel like it might be the same for a lot of people like making their living on Gumroad. At least for me too. It seemed like when the virus hit, actually there was more people looking for stuff to do, like looking for classes.
Yeah, we saw a huge spike. Honestly, like we saw a 30% increase in 1 month on Gumroad.
Jeez.
In revenue, yeah, which is insane.
Is that like a record?
That's pretty. At least, yeah. In terms of like, since the last time we saw a 30% increase was probably going from like $1,000 a month to like $1,300 a month in like 2011 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, we haven't seen it was like 33% to 32%, something like that. It was a big spike. Yeah, because as you mentioned, it was like all these people being like, either like, I have time, I'm at home, I need to make money, I just got laid off, or my freelance work all got canceled or whatever. And or people on the other side being like, I'm at home, I have time, I need to learn. So it's worked really, really nicely in our favor. And it's honestly like, I really believe like the best time to start a business is enabled by the internet, because this is kind of a new normal, right? Like it's not going to go back to malls and restaurants and theaters, and like it's going to come, a lot of that will come back, but it's going to be different. And a lot more people are mindful now of like, well, I'm going to start thinking about building a life and a business that is built for this kind of situation happening again. Probably too much even, right? Even if it doesn't happen, it's like, you can't help, like after 9/11, everyone was very cautious about all these sorts of things, right?
Yeah,
Just humans are very risk averse. So I think it's a great time to help people, learn skills and make money and do all these sorts of things.
For sure. All right. Well, I think we've run it.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed this talk. Yeah, it's always fun talking to you because, I mean, you've got a lot of shit to talk about, so it's fun. But yeah, and we could keep going forever and ever. I'm sure there's all this stuff we didn't even cover, like Utah and religion versus or technology startups and all this crazy stuff. But I'm a beginner host, so we get through everyone.
Next time.
But yeah. All right.
Awesome. That was really fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for watching and listening. And yeah, hope to I'll join the Discord and hopefully start contributing a little bit, or at least lurking.
Man. Come paint. Join the karaoke. It's fun.
I'm curious what that even means, but I guess I'll learn shortly.
Thanks for listening. We love hearing from you, so please leave a comment and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to see more from the Warrior Painters, please consider donating to our Gumroad. You'll find the link in our description. Thanks, and see you again soon.